I didn't necessarily grow up in a Christian home, although it sort of began that way. So when I was very little, my mom was really close to God, and that's how I became acquainted with Jesus. And then over the course of the years, my parents' marriage fell apart. There was some abuse and alcoholism. There was just a lot of tragedy in our household. And so my mom took us kids, and we were kind of on the run from my dad. I spent some time in a women's shelter with my mom. I think everything really changed for me when I became pregnant. I don't want to say devastated by the news, but I was shocked. I didn't know how I was going to make it. So I remember at one point, I'm like maybe 8 weeks pregnant. I've got no food in the fridge, no gas in my car, the rent is due. I'm pregnant, I've got morning sickness, I'm not working, and nobody knows. I remember somebody in my life told me, well, how do you expect to make it with a baby if you can't even take care of yourself? And so they advised me to get an abortion. They gave me the money for it because they knew that I wasn't going to be able to afford it. And so I made an appointment at Planned Parenthood. When I was in the clinic and filling out the paperwork, I really remember taking note of their printed material and just how clinical everything felt. They never called it a baby or a fetus. They called it a mass of cell tissues or a product of conception. They never mentioned the word abortion. It was procedure or termination. So you fill out the paperwork, and I remember sitting in there and looking at all the girls around me, and I was feeling really sad. And then they called my name. And then I went into this room, and they had me disrobe just like you would at any normal doctor's office. And I got up on a table. They gave me an ultrasound to see where I was at. And during the ultrasound, there was a monitor right there. The nurse was looking at it. I had full view of it, except I kept turning my head away because I didn't really want to see it. Although I remember at one point peeking really fast at the monitor. And right then it just hit me like, wow, like, that's my baby that I'm looking at right there. And I remember I started crying right there on the table, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And she's like, you're having second thoughts? And I'm like, I don't know. I was just kind of distraught. And I kept thinking maybe they should call somebody in here to talk to me, but they never did. Instead, she just finished the ultrasound, put everything away, and then she had me put my clothes back on and go back out into the waiting room until they're going to call my name again. So I'm out in the waiting room looking around, and I just remember feeling like I'm gonna suffocate in here, I'm gonna suffocate. I think I'm gonna die. I had to like run outside, and I remember, this is Las Vegas in September, it was hot. I remember that hot desert air just hitting me. I just collapsed on the ground and started crying. And so I didn't know this at the time, but at the very same instant, my mom was on a Greyhound bus headed towards Las Vegas from Winnipeg, where she lived. The whole time she was praying and praying and praying and praying that the Holy Spirit would protect me, protect the baby. I saw two paths that I could walk down. So I saw that if I go through with the termination, I saw myself becoming so messed up spiritually, physically, mentally. I saw myself actually feeling so guilty that I was going to try to get pregnant to replace the baby that I destroyed. And then on the other hand, the other way wasn't as clear if I kept the baby or kept it alive. I just heard God saying, just take my hand and trust me. Take my hand and trust me, and you'll be okay. Like, everything will be better than okay. Those are the words that kept coming to my head, was better than okay. And I didn't know if that meant I'm gonna keep the baby, I'm gonna give it up for adoption. It was so unclear to me, but I just felt like a feeling of like, trust me. And so I went back inside and I told them I changed my mind. And the very next day, my mom arrived in Vegas on her Greyhound bus and helped me pack up my apartment, and I went home with her to Winnipeg. And she took care of me during my pregnancy, and it was while I was in her care that I started going to her church. I started going to like a young adult church group, like youth group on Friday nights, Bible studies. I started reading the Bible and I became so close to God. I had my son the following spring and I was able to go back to school, finish broadcasting. I graduated from college when he was 4 years old. And then I embarked on my career in journalism by moving overseas with my son Caleb. So the two of us spent 3 years on the island of Saipan in the Northern Mariana Islands. I worked for an NBC affiliate out there and covered all kinds of crazy cool stories like a tsunami and an earthquake and a mass shooting and missing children and murder cases and all kinds of stuff out there. And then from there I ended up in Alberta, in Lethbridge, working for CTV. And then I hosted and produced Go Southern Alberta on Shaw. And then lo and behold, I'm finding myself here at Miracle Channel, which is so cool because when I first got out of school, one of my practicums was at Trinity Television in Winnipeg, and I worked on a show called It's a New Day with Willard and Betty Thiessen, who are the parents of Jeff Thiessen, who is our manager here at Miracle Channel. So it's almost like I've come full circle, and it's just been a crazy ride.